I never thought the man who offered me help would demand me as his payment. I left my tiny town with a suitcase full of dreams and a heart burning for a new life in Seattle. But I ended up ensnared by someone who promised to make me a star and threatened to destroy me if I didn't obey. The bus lurched to a stop, and I nearly stumbled, clutching the handle of my battered suitcase. Seattle unfolded before me like a movie scene. Car horns wove into the city's pulse, neon signs flickered through the gray drizzle, and skyscrapers stretched toward the clouds, as if trying to tear them apart. At 20, I was a small-town girl from Willow Creek, Montana, a place where everyone knew when you bought a new jacket and no one believed you could ever be more. But here I was, in this noisy chaos, with a laptop full of my designs and a dream to become someone bigger than the girl behind a diner counter. Back home, I worked at Billy's Diner, where the air smelled of fried bacon and broken hopes. I listened to farmers' complaints, scraped tips from their crumpled dollar bills, and hid them in a tin can under my bed. Every coin brought me closer to Seattle, a city I'd only seen in magazines and on my cracked phone screen. My mom used to say, "Lily, don't chase clouds, stay here where it's safe." But I couldn't. I wanted to create logos, banners, something that would make people stop and stare. My first week in Seattle was like running an obstacle course. I crashed on the sagging couch in my cousin Jenna's apartment, a cramped box with peeling wallpaper and the eternal smell of takeout noodles. I sent resumes to every agency I could find online and trudged to interviews where tired managers muttered, "We need experience." Experience. How do you get it if no one gives you a shot? But I didn't give up. At night, wrapped in an old quilt, I tweaked my designs, remembering the years I'd spent learning from YouTube tutorials, sketching logos until my fingers ached. One day, a downpour chased me into a sleek office building downtown. I was soaked, my sneakers squelching, my hair plastered to my face. The lobby felt like the future. Glass walls, steel beams, a floor that gleamed like a mirror. Above the reception desk hung a sign, "Caldwell Creative." My breath caught. That agency, their campaigns, bold, vibrant, unforgettable, were the ones I'd studied for hours, dreaming of working with them. I don't know what possessed me, but I approached the receptionist, her nails clicking like she was typing out a warning. "Hi," I said, trying to sound confident. "I'm a designer. Can I leave my portfolio?" She glanced up over her glasses, her lips thinning. "We don't take unsolicited submissions. Apply online." My shoulders sagged, but I nodded. "Thanks." As I turned toward the doors, I fumbled my bag, and my portfolio slipped from my hands. Papers scattered across the floor, my sketches, my sleepless nights, my soul in colors and lines. "Oh no, not now," I muttered, dropping to my knees. "Let me help." A deep voice cut through the lobby's hum. I looked up to see a man crouching beside me, his tailored suit screaming wealth. He was in his 40s, dark hair with a touch of silver at the temples, hazel eyes that seemed to read my thoughts. His fingers lifted a sketch of a logo, all curves and waves. "Is this yours?" he asked, studying it with interest. "Impressive." "Thanks," I said, my cheeks burning. "It's just me and a lot of coffee." He smiled, a warm, measured smile that made me feel seen. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. This is my agency." My heart skipped a beat. Ethan Caldwell, the name behind half the billboards in the city. I extended my hand, praying he wouldn't notice it trembling. "Come up to my office," he said, standing. "Show me what else you've got." Ethan's office was like stepping into another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Puget Sound, where gray waves rolled under the rain. Abstract paintings, splashes of color that screamed money, hung on the walls. His desk was dark polished wood with a single framed photo, Ethan on a yacht, grinning like he owned the sea. He sat, gesturing for me to show my portfolio. I spread out my work, sweat prickling my back. He flipped through slowly, his face unreadable. Every sketch was a piece of me, a logo for an imaginary cafe, a banner for a music festival, even a book cover I'd drawn, pretending it was mine. "No design school," he said finally. eyes still on the page. It wasn't a question. Nope, just me, YouTube, and a lot of late nights. He looked up, and something flickered in his gaze. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. That's rare. Hunger. Most people come with degrees, but no fire. Want an internship? Paid. I held my breath. You're serious? He grabbed a pen, scribbled a number on a notepad, and slid it across. Your starting salary. You start Monday if you say yes. I glanced at the figure. It was more than I'd earned in 2 years at the diner. My fingers shook as I nodded. Yes. Ethan, he corrected, his smile widening. Welcome to Caldwell Creative. Monday, I stepped into the agency like it was a new universe. The office buzzed. Designers argued over screens. Coffee machines hissed. The air smelled of fresh paper and ambition. I was the youngest intern, a small-town girl among city wolves in trendy glasses. But Ethan noticed me. He'd stop by my desk, praise my mock-ups, call me into meetings where I sat clutching a pencil, watching him charm clients with effortless confidence. Over lunch, colleagues whispered about him. He built this place from nothing, said Mia, designer with purple streaks in her hair. But watch yourself. Ethan always gets what he wants. I laughed, thinking it was just gossip. To me, he was a mentor, the man who gave me a chance. Weeks turned into months. I worked past midnight, soaking up everything: fonts, pitches, the art of negotiation. Ethan invited me to client dinners, where I held a glass of sparkling water and tried not to feel out of place among their diamonds and tuxedos. This is Lily, he'd say, resting a hand on my shoulder. My rising star. At a gala, where chandeliers glittered like stars, he handed me a drink and leaned close. You're going places, Lily, he said softly, his breath brushing my ear. Stick with me, and I'll open the world for you. His words warmed me like a blanket on a cold night. I felt like I belonged to something bigger. 6 months in, I was promoted to junior designer, a leap unheard of for an intern. I remember that day. Ethan called me to his office, where a folder with my new contract lay on his desk. You earned this, he said, his eyes gleaming. Let's celebrate. He took me to a rooftop restaurant, where the city sprawled below like a carpet of lights. Waiters buzzed around, serving plates of food so tiny they looked like art. I sat holding my fork, listening as Ethan told stories of his first campaign, how he'd won a client with a single handshake. You remind me of me, he said, pouring himself wine. Hungry, but I want to give you more. There's a project, top secret, for a global fashion brand. I want you leading the design. I nearly choked on my water. Me? Ethan, I'm still learning. You're ready, he said, his voice firm as steel. I believe in you. That project became my life. Rebranding a fashion line, logos, packaging, billboards. I drew day and night, my fingers smelling of graphite, my eyes burning from screens. Ethan was there, bringing coffee and paper cups, sitting across with his laptop, tossing out ideas. Add more warmth to the palette, he'd say, or, this is your stage, Lily, shine. Our meetings stretched past midnight. We talked beyond work. I told him about Willow Creek, my mom's hands, rough from the factory work, my fear of letting her down. He shared his own story, growing up in a rough neighborhood, lying about his age to get his first job. We're alike, he said. We fight for our place. One evening in his office, surrounded by scattered sketches, he looked at me longer than usual. The desk lamp caught his eyes, and he said, You're not just talented, Lily. You're special. I've never seen anyone like you. My heart raced. Thanks, I mumbled, looking away. You're kind of special, too. He smiled, but there was something new in it. Hungry, almost predatory. I brushed it off. He's my boss, my mentor. It's just fatigue, right? The project launched, and it was a sensation. Clients called my designs revolutionary. Fashion magazines splashed them across covers. At the launch party, amid champagne and laughter, Ethan pulled me aside with an envelope. For you, he said, his voice low, almost intimate. I opened it, and my eyes widened. A lease agreement for a downtown Seattle apartment with panoramic windows and a marble kitchen. Paid for a year. Ethan, I breathed, holding the papers. I can't accept this. You can, he said, his hand closing over mine, lingering too long. You're my star. This is your new home. I signed, though my chest tightened. The apartment was a fairy tale. High ceilings, a city view, a bed with silk sheets. But it came with changes. Ethan called every night, his voice softer, more insistent. He invited me to exclusive parties where I felt like an outsider among his friends, men in expensive watches who looked at me like a prize. I told myself it was fine. He's investing in me, believes in me, but doubts gnawed like mice in an old house. One evening, he asked me to come to his penthouse. Confidential project, he said over the phone. Just you and me. I arrived, clutching a folder of sketches. But there was no meeting table inside, only candles flickering in the dimness, a bottle of wine, and Ethan standing too close. Lily, he said, his voice thick as smoke. He stepped toward me, and I felt the heat of his body. I've given you everything, a job, a home, a future. You know what I want in return. I backed up, my sneakers catching on the rug. Ethan, I thought we were talking about work. He grabbed my wrist, not hard but firm, his fingers digging into my skin. Don't play dumb, he hissed, his face so close I smelled his cologne. You're mine, I made you, be with me or I'll crush you. Is that what you want? My heart pounded like a hammer. I yanked my hand free, my legs shaking. I need to go. He laughed, a cold cutting sound. You'll come back, Lily. You don't have a choice. I ran to my apartment, his apartment, through the rain. Tears mixing with the drops on my face. In bed, I couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling where shadows danced like ghosts. The next day, a message from Ethan arrived. You know what happens if you say no. I'll destroy everything you have. One call, and your job's gone. One email, and your clients will hear what an ungrateful girl you are. I'll tell your mom how you spat on my kindness. Want her to be ashamed of her daughter. Think, Lily, you have 1 week. My hands shook as I read it. He knew about my mom. I'd told him, bared my heart. His words were chains. He could spread lies that I'd slept my way to the top. Take the apartment. Leave me with nothing. I pictured returning to Willow Creek, my mom holding a newspaper with fake headlines, her eyes full of disappointment. Fear choked me, but I couldn't let him win. I remembered whispers in the break room, about women who left the agency suddenly, about Ethan always winning. I went to Mia, the designer with kind eyes, who'd once lent me her jacket when I was freezing. He's dangerous, she said, glancing around to ensure no one heard. But there's an archive in the basement. Old files, emails. You might find something. Just be careful. That night I snuck into the archive, where the air smelled of dust and forgotten secrets. My fingers flipped through folders, my heart pounding so loud I feared someone would hear. I found emails, fragments of exchanges where Ethan hinted at favors from employees, at deals. One name stood out, Sarah Blake, a designer who'd left 2 years ago. I tracked her down on LinkedIn, sent a desperate message begging to meet. After a long pause, she replied, "Fine, but somewhere public." We met at a crowded cafe, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee. Sarah was thin, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "He did it to me too," she said, gripping her mug. "Pressured me, threatened me, said he'd ruin my career if I wasn't cooperative. I have proof, his texts, even a recording of him yelling. But I was scared. He said he'd make sure I'd never work again, not even as a cleaner. What if we do this together?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Would you try?" She stared at me for a long time, then nodded. "Yes, for me, and for you." Sarah and I gathered everything. Her recordings, my screenshots, that lease agreement that now felt like a cage. Through a women's network Mia recommended, I found a lawyer, Ellen, a no-nonsense woman who listened to my story and said, "We'll get him." She took the case pro bono, her eyes blazing with anger for us. We filed a complaint with Caldwell Creative's board, accusing Ethan of harassment, blackmail, and abuse of power. He called that same day. His name on my screen made my stomach twist. "You're pathetic," he snarled, his voice like poison. You think anyone will believe a nobody from nowhere? I'll ruin you, Lily. Your career will be ashes. Your name will be dirt. I'll make you beg to crawl back to me. I was shaking, but I forced myself to answer. Try it. The board launched an investigation. Sarah and I weren't alone. 3 more women came forward, their stories painfully similar. Reporters caught wind, and soon Caldwell Creative was in headlines. Scandal rocks advertising empire. Ethan announced he was stepping down for personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. His empire was cracking. I was fired. The board said there was no place for me after the mess. I packed my things into a cardboard box, feeling my colleagues' stares, but I held my head high. I'd lost my job, but I'd kept myself. Sarah became my lifeline. We started freelancing, sharing a tiny office above a donut shop. At first, clients were scarce. A logo for a cafe, a banner for a fair. But my designs spoke for themselves. People noticed, shared them, and slowly my name stopped being tied to Ethan. I wrote long letters to my mom, telling her about Seattle, but not about him. One day, I called and told her the truth. She cried, but not from shame. "You're my pride, Lily," she said. "You're stronger than I ever was." A year later, I sat in a cafe, sketching a logo for a new client, a local theater wanting something bold. My phone buzzed. Mia sent a link to an article. Caldwell Creative declares bankruptcy. Ethan had vanished from the spotlight, his name a synonym for disgrace. I leaned back, watching the rain outside. I'd come to Seattle for a dream, but I'd found something more, myself. Now, as I look at the city from my office window, small but mine, I think of that girl trembling on the bus. I never thought the man who offered me help would demand my soul, but I also didn't know I had the strength to break his chains. This is my story, not of falling, but of rising, and I'm only just beginning.
If Lily's story of fighting back and reclaiming her power from Ethan's grip had you cheering, or maybe clutching your phone in suspense, smash that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next gripping tale of ambition, betrayal, or epic triumphs. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever faced a situation like Lily's, where someone tried to control you? Or do you have a story about standing tall when everything seemed stacked against you? Share it below. Let's get the conversation started. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.